Returning to Yehezkel and the chapter 8, verse 14, where it says, I'll read it in English. I read it before in Hebrew. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north. And behold, there sat the women weeping for Tammuz. And for those of you who will look into the commentators, it'll kind of be very difficult to understand it. Some even want to associate Tammuz, which was a god that people worshipped back in the times of Syria, Mesopotamia, Babylonia, etc. But what is it saying? And he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was towards the north. Why do I have to know it was towards the north? I mean, if it would be towards the south. And what happens if they didn't mention it at all? And what do you mean? There were women there sitting and weeping for Tammuz. We had previously asked, where did the word Tammuz come from? Again, when Avraham Avinu provides us with a language, it was not merely, again, for the purpose of giving a name, and so we could address ourselves to that idea, that concept, that month, or whatever. Tammuz comes from the word Tam Vav Zayin. Tam Vav Zayin. Tam in Hebrew means completion, and Vav and Zayin are obviously two letters of the alphabet, of the Hebrew alphabet. What is the significance of Vav and Zayin? They are not by some coincidence or unrelated to the idea of Tammuz, in that the two previous months to Cancer, Taurus and Gemini, were created by the Vav and the Zayin. Were created by the Vav and the Zayin. Now again, another question that we had asked, which we did not answer as yet, was, okay, God in his infinite wisdom and in his plan for the universe, the blueprint, understood that there must be a month of Satan. There must be a month in which there would be this overwhelming, enormous amount of energy infusing within the cosmos. But why, what brought on this month to be the month that would be the recipient of this kind of energy? The Vav created Taurus, says Avraham Avinu. Vav. Yetzirah bashor ba'olam v'iyah. The Vav, says the Sefer Yetzirah, Avraham, that the Vav became the dominion by which the creation of Taurus and the Hebrew month of Iyar would be created. The Zayin would be the letter by which Gemini and Sivan, the Hebrew month for the constellation twins, would be created. And therefore, immediately we have a clue provided by this word Tammuz. What is Taurus? What is Taurus? Without going into, the full implications concerning Taurus, but the Zohar, and only the Zohar, refers to this month, Taurus, as Chodesh Ziv. What does Chodesh Ziv mean? Says the Zohar. A tremendous amount of energy, of unharnessed energy, that enters into this world. In other words, God again wants to give when we say energy, he wants everyone to have fulfillment. When we speak of energy, we are talking about those things that can do away with the illusion of unfulfillment, destruction, disruption, disorder, chaos. This is his intent. It is not the reverse. This is his intent. Therefore, in the month of Taurus, he brought this total infusion that the world needed and was necessary, but it was unharnessed. Therefore, we know that the month of Taurus, again, has brought destruction. The destruction of the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, and many other unhappy events. But there is a difference between Taurus and Tammuz. What is the difference? Taurus came down without providing us with an inbuilt insulation of this energy, and therefore, in Taurus, you never begin a new venture. You never get married that month. You never move into a new apartment or purchase a new home, or for that matter, purchase even new clothing. You never do anything of a beginning of any sorts in the month of Taurus, because we have not been provided with this security shield that would prevent, like the sun's rays coming down, while without the benefit of the energy of the sun, there would be no life on this planet. But at the same time, God created ozone layers to keep out those negative, those disruptive forces, ultraviolet rays, and etc., that could be harmful, that could cause a disruption. Now that we hear suddenly that the ozone layers have been pierced, meaning there are holes in the ozone layers, we have something to fear. There would be an undue amount of energy penetrating into this universe. Greenhouse effect, drying up the rivers, no food because the land would be parched, would be dried out, etc., by the enormous heat. This is the way they're talking. This is what is supposed to be coming, chas v'shalom, in the next few years. And they even attribute the drought of last year to this effect. The negative aspects of the sun are penetrating into this universe. So in the month of Taurus, there is no security shield. Along comes the Zion, again without getting into the particulars of what the implication of Tumim is. The creation of Gemini. Gemini, if you may not be aware of it, is an air sign. Air is the balancing agent of this universe, balancing agent. And Gemini, of the three air signs, is the third column, is the balancing agent of the air sign. In other words, every sign has a right, left, and central. Air, fire, and water. Every sign. So in the air realm, we have Libra, which is right column of the air sign, Aquarius, which is the fire sign, and Gemini, which is the air. In other words, there is so much balance that was brought down during the month of Gemini, and that's why the Torah was given in that month, but you've heard the lecture on Gemini, so I don't want to repeat it. But there was such an infusion by the Lord into the universe of such tremendous energy of balancing, and that's why the Torah was given in that month, because the Jews would naturally be able to tap this kind of balancing power, and therefore when there was a revelation on Mount Sinai, what kind of revelation was there on Mount Sinai? They saw sound. There was nothing that was not revealed. That's why it's called revelation. Everything of a pure, unadulterated energy force that can only cause one thing: Bila Hamavet L'Netzach. That there would no longer be death. That was the purpose. When you can balance negative energy or an overabundance with Gemini, then what would happen? This enormous energy could then become manifested in Tammuz. There would be the completion in Vav in Zion, the Vav of Taurus, which is unharnessed energy, together with the Gemini factor, balancing to create a security shield of a nature that would cause Bila Hamavet L'Netzach, no further death in this world, which already came into existence. Had it not been for Moses and the golden calf situation. But when Moses came down, as we said previously, he already was coming down with the completion of the Vav and the Zion. The two factors, the energy and the balancing of that energy, creating it into a useful force, into a harnessed force. Then, what followed after the balancing of Gemini and its influence over Taurus, this tremendous unharnessed energy, came Tammuz, the completion of the Vav and the Zion. It is so simple. It means that Avram again was providing us by its name, Tammuz, that this is the month where all balancing of all energy would take place. That was the result of the combination of the Vav and the Zion, of Taurus and Gemini. However, the golden calf, without going into, again, we've discussed the golden calf, was the symbol, and it portrayed one idea: the desire to receive for oneself alone. We know that balancing means like the bulb. The bulb draws energy to itself. It has a filament which restricts and creates continuity, brings about circuitry. That is what we call the restriction factor. That is what Tu'umim is about. Gemini is about. Balancing. That's why it's twins. What do you mean twins? Right and left now are going to be joined together. Right and left. What is left? Left is the enormous power that is drawn, we know, by the negative or desire to receive, which is in the intelligence of a bulb, in the left column, in the left pole of a bulb. This was all brought together. The negative energy of Taurus, the unharnessed energy of Taurus, was worked upon by the Zion, by Gemini, and consequently, what emerged was a totality of circuitry, a totality of continuity, a totality of the total beneficence of the Creator. That there would never be disruption again. There would never be a halting. It would be sartan. It would be the removal of all grief, of all misfortune, all chaos, and all disorder. That's why it was given the name sartan. In other words, it was removed. But the Jew failed again with the golden calf. And so that same day that should have been good, should have been sartan, meaning the removal of grief, interruption, discontinuity, was reverted back to where we are today. But Tammuz meant the completion of the Vav and the Zion. And that's why there is such a name. When it said in Ezekiel, he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, he's referring to Tammuz. What is the door of the gate of the Lord's house? What does that mean? I'm in His company. Is God, or is there any aspect of God in a lack or unfulfillment or negativity or chaos or disorder? No. When you talk about God and when we refer to God, we're talking about the light of God, the light force of God. When there's light, no darkness. The dark could be totally dark. The room could be totally dark. Flip a switch. Light has a tremendous power. Light has a power of providing energy for people. When people are struggling with an idea, someone's talking to them, and you don't know what this person is trying to tell you. The doctor's trying to tell you something. Someone is trying to tell you something. You then say, I still don't see it. I mean, you don't see it. I don't understand it. What do you mean I don't see it? Oh, now I see it. What do you mean you see it? What did you see? You saw, like the Jew on Mount Sinai, saw sound. How can you see sound? What does it mean he saw sound? He had a total vision of what was going on. A total vision, a total revelation. Power of seeing. Power of seeing. That is when you're close to the light force. When you are a channel for seeing. You put light into the world, which everyone has an obligation. Not only to provide, but everyone's too busy still trying to provide a little light for themselves. And so when we struggle trying to provide a little light within ourselves, we have no time to provide light for others. Therefore, anyone who wants to provide light, one of the rules in Kabbalah at least is, be sure that he at least is providing some light for himself, because you can never share that which you don't have. You can never share that which you don't have. Therefore, when it says that he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord, which was in Safona. What does it mean, Safona? In the north. North, again, when we speak of directions, the north is the place where it's dark, right? Nobody ever questions why there's no sun in the north. Unless, of course, you go up to Norway and Sweden, so you're too close, so there's no usual pattern of day and night. And if there is darkness, the darkness always appears for most of mankind in the north. No one questions, why does it appear? Why did God make it so? Well, he could have done it the reverse. The south would be the dark side, and the north. And the sun comes up from the west and settles in the east. Why? Why? Who asked such questions? The Zohar asked those questions. Because without question, then we are stupid people. We are an ignorant people. Every question must be asked. The reason we may call that type of a question a question of stupidity is because who's going to give you the answer? So therefore, we always address ourselves to those questions. What kind of question is that? Don't you know? Because the sun rises in the east and then moves in a southerly direction. But that wasn't our question. Our question was, why did God do it that way? Why does the universe conform or operate on that procedure? Why? Because the north, and which is the time of people sleeping, tremendous amount of negativity. Sun can't be there because the sun is light. It can't be there. But if we are connected to the left, meaning if the Vav and the Zion, if that enormous energy of the north is harnessed, that would be wonderful. But Ezekiel is talking about destruction, unfortunately. And he's saying that this month, he wasn't even talking about the month. He was talking about there are women that sat weeping for Tammuz. Why were they weeping? Because he's talking about the destruction. The Vav and the Zion were no longer in a position of one unified whole. They were separated by the Jews. They lived in a way of no sharing. They lived in a way of only the desire to receive for itself alone. And you know what happens when there's no Gemini? You know what happens when there's no filament in the bulb? Blows. And that's why they were weeping. Now you might ask, why did the women weep? And what about the men? What about the men? Well, we can give a simple answer. A simple answer. And I don't want to dwell on that point, but the point we're making is this is what Tammuz is about, why they were wailing and weeping, because they had been brought to the door of the Lord. They were brought to the door. It was Bila Hamavet Lanetzach. Death already came to a complete halt. That came to a halt. Not, unfortunately, our lifestyles come to a halt in specific instances throughout our lives. Misfortune, a trauma, or whatever. They were brought to the door. They were there. They connected already with the Lord. Where? With this enormous Safona energy, with this northern energy, which is the light force. They were there already. And they blew it. The reason the women were, I could say very simply, because the women understand it and the men don't. That could be an answer. Would you say women have a higher intelligence than men? The answer is yes. That we know from Adam Harishon. Remember, in the day of in Genesis 2, in chapter 2, he took a rib out of Adam, and says, and he built the rib. Build a rib. He took the rib out of Adam. You recall? It says he took the rib of Adam, and he was going to make a woman. And he says, and he built the rib, but the rib was already there in the bodily frame of Adam. So the Zohar says, and only the Zohar says, and we depend on him. Nobody else providing any answer, so do we have an alternative? And it says, Vayiven comes from the word Bina, intelligence. He wasn't building a new rib. The rib was already there, taken from Adam. He infused the rib that subsequently from that rib emerged a woman. He infused that rib with an extra added Bina, intelligence. Okay, so we could answer that's what it means. There is another explanation. Again, what are women? Women are Malchut. Women are the recipients. They make or break. Everything depends on women. Although the men live in that illusion that they are the forerunners of everything. No, the women were weeping. Why? Because they could have been the recipients. They understood this, what was happening. They understood what this month was about, says Ezekiel. And that's why they were weeping, because they are the recipients, even though men are also recipients, but they understood it with their consciousness. Okay. In any event, that is what the implication of Tammuz is about. Just in passing, the Zohar mentioned one more month, Tevet, which is Capricorn. Again, those who observe the physicality of this universe say, oh, that's why it happened. That's why it's bad. You know why Tisha B'Av is bad? Because the temple was destroyed. We know that no physical experience and no physical manifestation is an indication of what's going on. Never use that, according to the Zohar. Never use it. The physical manifestation happened because something of a metaphysical nature, something of an unseen nature was taking place. And if the destruction of the temple took place on the 9th day of Av, this day, and not another day, it has a reason. There was an enormous amount of energy on that day. What does it mean? Tet. Tet is Yesod. I won't go into it. Yesod is the male organ. It also could be the female organ, female sexual organ. There's a paradox there. What's the paradox? From the same place that comes a birth of a new intelligence, Same place comes waste. What a paradox. What a paradox. The same place that comes the highest form of God's intelligence in this universe. A new baby. What comes from there too? At the same time, the worst, the waste. That which has no purpose. That which can never be used. What a contrast. That's the Tov of Shivasa Tammuz. The whole world is based on that. You can either tap into waste or you can tap into that. That decision is left to us. To us. But it indicates to us, even on a physical level, the paradox of life. I mean, who thought up of this idea? Waste and the highest form of intelligent energy. A human being. With all that he represents, comes from the same place. Yes. As Tisha B'Av was a destruction of the temple, and it says also on that day, Mashiach was either born already or will be born on that day. The Messiah, I mean. This is all life. When a tragedy occurs, when a misfortune occurs, if you learn a little Kabbalah, you don't have to answer, God knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, but meanwhile I'm suffering. Well, he has a good reason. No. No. Because that's attributing misfortune to God. Like he's an instrument of bringing misfortune to this world. Wrong. Wrong. It's the same way as Sartan. The same way as on Tisha B'Av. He brought destruction. But because it was so powerful, he also brought the coming of the Mashiach. Both opposites occurring at the same time. So when one undergoes some form of misfortune, some form of disorder in his life, that's the moment that they want to give you more. Just the opposite. When things run like this, then what are you doing here? Obviously, because of a prior incarnation, at the moment, in a prior lifetime, the person didn't have food. What did he do? He went to steal. So he comes back now to correct that action of stealing. But if he can understand that when that moment, as it will happen again in this lifetime, if he doesn't accomplish it in this lifetime, he'll have to come back again and again and again and again. That at that moment where there's disruption or there's a halt, at that moment is Sartan. At that moment lies side by side the answer of how to remove that. But if you get so consumed into the aspect of negativity, and you have never learned or never become aware of the fact that you can have both at the same time, that whenever you have disruption, it's because he wants you to move one step higher. Because he wants to give you more than you have. More than you have. And so when misfortune takes place, whenever it takes place, chas v'shalom, at that moment, God is waiting. Like Moshe was waiting. Take it. Take the scroll. No. What did they opt for? The golden calf. Instead of taking the scroll, they opt for this. The same way is when someone, chas v'shalom, loses a close person, a close relative, at that moment he feels the lack. Do you realize that what you experience in the way of lack, at the same moment, there is an abundance of more than you had when you had that prior condition? There is something more that's now awaiting you, not less. God doesn't want you to have less. He wants you to have more. Look all around us. It always operates on that principle. Where there is what appears, that's why we call it an illusion. Why do we call unhappiness illusion? Misfortune illusion. What do you mean? Cancer, chas v'shalom, is an illusion. What do you mean? The person's suffering. But at that moment that he's suffering is because of a prior incarnation. So God wants it that way. No. So today, they start opening up new clinics and start thinking about, look at that as an opportunity. And that will bring a repression or the spread of the disease. And ultimately, they're even claiming by forms of meditation, by forms of attitude, that you can remove the cancer. I'm not saying this. I'm just saying the way they are talking. But according to Avraham Avinu, that is in essence the principle. With this positive attitude that God doesn't want halt. He doesn't want pain. He doesn't want chaos. So, this is to wash out something of a before. But in essence, right next to it is lying the cure, like we say in poison ivy. Where lies the cure for poison ivy? The tree right next to it. The tree that gives one poison ivy, right next to it. Who knows that? Well, they never bothered to look at the tree next to poison ivy. Wherever that misfortune lies, at the same time lies the beneficence of the Lord. It operates everywhere. It operates in sex organs. It operates on Tu B'Av, on Tisha B'Av. It operates in every aspect of our life. If we can take that attitude, then life becomes a whole string of different things, according to Avraham Avinu, according to the Zohar. Now, how do we know all this? Energy, lack of energy, there is energy, and so on. What about Tevet? And someone asked that question. There was one more month, Capricorn, mentioned also by the Zohar, that it is a month that one should not begin new ventures, etc. Just like Leo and Cancer, same thing. And yet Tammuz, with our explanation, Tevet is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn has 2 months, has 2 signs that it shares it and distributes its energy. It is Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn and Aquarius. Again, I have discussed this in detail, and it's available, so I don't want to spend tonight, because the factors surrounding Tammuz is what is uppermost in our minds. Tevet had one aspect in common with Tammuz and Av. What happened on Tevet, in the month of Tevet, in the 10th day of Tevet? They pierced the wall around all of Jerusalem. On the 17th day of Tammuz, they pierced the wall that surrounded the temple. Av, they destroyed the temple. The 3 months have something in common. But what is their common denominator? Energy. We know that Jerusalem is the energy center of the world. Now there's an outer layer, an inner layer, and the center. And the center. When they pierced Tevet, and everything is about energy. Now Tevet, while it is a negative month, why? Because how did the Romans and the Babylonians before them, how did they get to the piercing on that day? Why didn't it happen the day before? Why didn't it happen the day after? Because on that day was the day that, while it was a lesser form of energy, the wall around, and Tevet is of the lesser of the 3 in negative energies, it happened in that month. And because, why is it lesser? Why isn't it as severe as the actual destruction of the temple? The actual destruction of what we call our power station. What was the temple all about? To provide energy for the whole world, automatically. The same way as they build a power station to provide electricity for the entire surrounding area, that's what the temple was about. To provide energy for the whole world on a greater scale. The outer ring, the outer wall of the temple, did not mean total destruction. They could have prevented it. They could have stopped the Romans or the Babylonians from entering into the holy city, or even after they passed the wall. So we see a gradation. We see that Av is of a greater intensity, Tammuz of a little lesser, and Tevet of a much lesser form of infusion of energy. I just wanted to make that note, since some of you may have thought about the question. I don't want to dwell on that. Now we return to everything is wonderful. So we have now a condition where there is Satan. There's somewhere hidden. Where is it hidden? That we can tap this enormous energy in Tammuz. Where is it hidden? He says, Satan. Avram says, take it away. Well, how do I take it away? Where is it? Where's the instrument? How? Before that, I should just mention in passing, you notice the Kabbalistic or Sephardic het. Some of you may not know, but the Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzot are written with different kinds of letters. Different kinds of letters. This is the one. This is the old. When I say Sephardic, I shouldn't say Sephardic, because Persia was not in Spain. The people who lived in Persia was before Spain became a country. So, what do you mean the Persians are Sephardic? They're not Sephardic. It's actually, it stems beyond. The Syrians are Sephardim. They're not Sephardim. They never lived in Syria, in Spain. What do you mean they're Sephardim? When they lived in Syria, there was no Spain. So I'll just say the Kabbalistic way of writing the het in the Torah. You see here a vav and a zayin, and it's connected. The het was the letter that created Tammuz. The het. You know why? And because after what we've just finished discussing, the word Tammuz means completion of the vav and the zayin, when they're connected. When there's an embracing, when there's an insulation, when we create a security shield, when we balance and harness this kind of energy. It's simple. So, on a meditation, whatever form of meditation, and I'm not, for those who, the Anabakah, we have always stressed the Anabakah, which is one of the most powerful mediums by which we can tap balanced energy. We make use of the het. How do we remove it, we ask? The het. Making a meditation on the Bakar, which I don't want to discuss at this point, because that would take up more time than I want to allot to the simple benefits. Het. Tough created the moon. Let it tough. Again, I know some of you may question. I mean, a little letter like this creates a whole planet. Come on, let's be realistic. But when you'll give me the answer, how that little DNA, you see, you can all see the letters. See, I can even make the letters bigger, right? But you know how big the DNA is that makes us? How big it is? You can't see it only under a microscope. That you don't question. How could this little thing already contain what color hair, how tall I'll be, what my weight? I mean, all this is already known in that little, and that creates the person, and that is okay with everybody. Well, if that's okay with everybody, I don't have to explain how this big tough, which is bigger, you don't even need a microscope to see it, and the het, you don't need a microscope. If that little DNA that you can't see with the naked eye can create a human being, so I'm going to accept already that this form contains that kind of energy that created the moon. Now, in every physical manifestation, man, as the Zohar says, and only the Zohar says, man is exact copy of everything else that exists in this world. What do you mean he's the copy? In other words, me and the table have one thing in common. Me and the planet Moon have one thing in common. Me and the constellation of Cancer have one thing in common. What is the one thing we have in common? What is the one thing we have in common? Says the Zohar. Man has two parts to himself. He has a body consciousness and a soul consciousness. Body consciousness, that's the one that convinces us, oh, things are bad, and I can't fly, and I can't move as quickly as I would. The body holds me back. The soul can fly from place to place. You can how fast can you travel if you went to a vacation on the Riviera? If you've been there once, how long will it take you now to travel there? You can leave the body behind, but could you be there now? Of course. Split second. Who holds us back from going there? What makes me take that plane to get there? The body. So there's two kinds of consciousness. There's the halting consciousness called the body consciousness, and there is the soul consciousness. Moves freely. Moves freely. We will all shortly come to the idea that when someone is in Los Angeles, I can see exactly what he's doing. How is that possible? So how is it possible that you can picture yourself on the Riviera when you're sitting over here? I mean, that's possible. Now you can't. Why don't you see somebody else over there? That becomes a little different. But it's such an illusion. Because there are people who can see what's going on in places 3,000 miles and 10,000 miles away today. But everybody will see that. What will it entail? It entails that the soul consciousness, which has no limitation, becomes the ruler. The physical, the body consciousness is what prevents us. The desire to receive. What is body consciousness? Desire to receive for oneself alone. That's all. But if you have a consciousness of desire to receive for the sake of sharing, you gradually move away from dominion from the body consciousness. I'm saying that again briefly, although I know it could require hours of expansion. And that's my connection with the table. The table has two consciousness. It has a body consciousness and a soul consciousness. That's why when I walk into a restaurant, I got to look at the table I'm going to sit down at. Why? Because who knows who ate there? Does it mean that we control? Yeah. Man controls every aspect of this universe, according to the Zohar. We know that, again, from a Zohar that I don't want to go into, because all of this has already been explained. Adam called all the things. Zohar says, I need Adam to give names to every animal, every creature, every planet, and everything. Adam has to give the names. What would happen if he didn't give the names? And why do I have to know what names he called them? Says the Zohar right on the spot. Man has control, potentially, over every aspect of this universe. That means someone who is not just a good person comes and eats at this table. Right? He will make the body consciousness. He can make the body conscious of this table react violent in a halting, in a chaotic way. I come now afterwards, after this person left, I come and I eat at this table. I want to enjoy the food. I may even get sick on the show. Why? Because the body consciousness of this table has been aroused by that evil person. So you got to watch where you sit down. The chair, everything. We're not cognizant of this, but little by little, people are beginning to become aware of these facts. Turning back to the moon and the Cancer constellation. They also have a body and soul consciousness. Same thing. Now the question is, what are you going to connect with? These two letters bring us to where we want to go. These two letters, why are these two letters? Because they are the DNA of those two entities, the moon or the constellation of Cancer. I can draw either positive energy, the soul consciousness, or I can draw down the body consciousness. How do I draw either one? Depending on my behavior and nothing more. Depending on my behavior. If someone is taking the best part of ourselves, where we're not evil, but Chas v'Shalom, someone lost his father this month, it is only natural. Remember, it's no evil to feeling remorse or feeling down to feeling unfulfilled that your father left, he died. Nothing evil with it. But it is a body consciousness thought. The body left. My father's body left. I feel a lack. Then I've connected with the body consciousness of this constellation. Therefore, when the physicians say they've made a study and happy people do not get cancer, because happy people do not feel lack under any circumstances. Everything they take with the expression a grain of salt. No matter what happens, it'll be good. It'll be good. This is passing. It's passing. It's passing. What happens with the one who can't do it? So they provided us with different methods on how we can create a security shield and not be penetrated by the body consciousness of cancer and the body consciousness of the tough. Anabakoach. Meaning, I use these two letters when I do the Anabakoach and the particular verse which deals with these two. Again, where does it come from? Where does the Anabakoach mention? Mentioned in the Zohar. How come people don't know about it? We don't know a lot of things. We don't know a lot of things. How come there's a lot of people, chas v'shalom, that have cancer, don't even know there's alternatives? They don't know. They go right into the chemotherapy and radiation, and they finish. They finish the body consciousness. They're thinking to remove themselves from the dreaded enemy called body consciousness, because the soul is not being eaten up by cancer. The body that's being eaten up. How do you get the body away from that? No, they go further into it. So they destroy the body. Well, that's one way of getting rid of the body consciousness, by destroying, but nobody wants to die, chas v'shalom. That's only the problem. But meanwhile, temporarily, they'll cut out a little here, cut out a little there, use a little chemotherapy, and that will solve the problem. No. Body consciousness is not something of a physical nature. Talking about consciousness, intelligence. Nothing to do with the physical body. The physical body has something internal that has to be changed. Better attitudes, positive attitudes, immediately changes everything. They're writing books about it. So I feel a little better when I can say that, what the Zohar says. What's better attitudes? A person that's sharing always has a better attitude. A person who's involved only in himself has a negative attitude. It's so simple. What's the caption? The caption is desire to receive for oneself alone, or desire to receive for the sake of sharing. That's all it is. That makes the whole difference. Attitudes. Same thing here. If I want to make use of these letters, it depends also on my attitude. I'm just going to make use of the het, and I'll say, okay, cancer, the disruptive, the evil, the disease factor of cancer, stay away. But he's not connecting. Why? Because the only way Avram said sartan, to take it away, is you have to connect to the soul consciousness. How do I connect to the soul consciousness? If I will have an attitude of sharing, then I connect with the soul consciousness. Because what's the soul consciousness? Soul consciousness doesn't know about a desire to receive for oneself alone. The soul consciousness has to do with an intelligence called desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Therefore, we use these two with the Anabakoach. And if you have any questions, you can speak with, people of the center, and they'll be more than happy to give you that idea. Now, how strong can we make our soul consciousness become the dominion? That's the whole trick. In everything we do. Remember, if we have halts and we have downs, because of a prior lifetime, that we have to experience. In a prior lifetime, I'm cleaning it out. I came back here for the reason of cleaning it out. So if I become more depressed, you know what you did? You'll come back again. Depression doesn't remove going down. Depression doesn't remove a bankruptcy. Depression doesn't remove illness. On the contrary, doctors say it's just the opposite. You increase the potentiality of that disease by being depressed, by you being unhappy, and so on and so forth. So the first benefit of being depressed is a further aggravation of the condition. Can't think clear. Why? Because what's depression? You're into yourself. How bad it is for me. Why did this happen to me? All those me things only continues to compound the problem. A change of attitude means a change and attachment with soul consciousness. What's a change of attitude? There's a reason. There's a reason. Not only there's a reason, washing out old incarnations. No, he wants to give me more. Then who are you connecting with? You're connecting with God. Where is there more? In body consciousness? No. Body only knows one thing. I'm hungry. Give me. The soul doesn't say give me. It only wants pure light. It doesn't need the food that the body has to dispense with the way it does. There are 21 days. 21 days. From the 17th day of Tammuz to the 9th day of Av. 21 days. Those who still know about the 21 days, I say it's only the real Orthodox people who know, real Orthodox people who know about 21 days. That exists between the 17th day of Tammuz and the 9th day of Av. 21 days. And according to the Ari, he says, Min ha'tov v'kasher hu me'od l'kol ba'al nefesh lashevet ba'avelut. During these 17 days, he says we should sit in mourning. Sit in mourning. And he never says this is kasher. We're familiar with the word kasher. Go into a restaurant, maybe it's kosher, maybe it's not, but on the window at least it says kasher, right? The Ari doesn't use the word kasher loosely, and he also doesn't, why would he apply this word kasher to a concept of mourning between the 17th day of Tammuz and the 9th day of Av? Because what does kasher really mean? Most people immediately connect it with an animal or food derivatives. All dairy products are kasher. Hard cheese, maybe because it comes from the rennet of a non-kosher animal. Other things. But the whole idea of kasher centers around the animal. The animal. The animal. What we enjoy of the animal, in fact, it's only a non-kosher animal that you really get supreme pleasure. A dog, a cat, non-kosher, people have pleasure. Can you have pleasure out of a cow? No. What a paradox. What a paradox. Kosher animal, you have no pleasure. Only one pleasure. What's the pleasure? Kill the animal, eat the meat. It's a good tasting steak. You like steak? That's the only pleasure. What other pleasure can we get out of an animal? None. After it's gone. The meat. The meat. Again, the body consciousness. Body consciousness. That's why it's red, so on and so forth. There are 21 days. In these 21 days, again, only because Yossi is telling me we only have a few minutes left, that 21 days means 3 sevens. 3 sevens. We know everything is structured in sevens. Everything. The world was created in 7 days. A Brit occurs after the 7th day. Important thing is, there's completion. Why are there 3 sevens? Briefly stated, unfortunately I can't even get into that right now. There are 3 sevens. Whenever you hear the number 3, you know immediately. It's a clue. It's like a formula. And physicists can't operate without formulas, and we don't operate without formulas. 3 sevens, meaning there's a right, left, and central. A right, left, and central. These 21 days, for them to be so fully packed with high energy intensity, is because days, or 7 days, means a completion of one aspect, whether it be the right column, which is the first, the second, which is the left column. Remember, even when we said why the 30 days in a month, we said the first 10 are right, the second 10 is central, and the last 10 is negative. That's why the last 7 are the most serious of the destruction period, the actual destruction of the temple itself. That's why there are 21 days. The reason I'm mentioning that to you is to understand that these 21 days, again, if we were Moshe, these 21 days would be the greatest benefit. The greatest benefits would be coming our way. If we could be in the position of Moshe, we would get married in those days. We would begin a new venture. We would become healed in those days. But because we have fallen under the influence, and we are under that influence, of death, of disruption, of negativity, therefore we do not take that chance. However, in these 21 days, despite the fact that it is negative, we can still provide ourselves with a security shield. Now, for those who want to know, and those who pray the Amidah, which is the Shmoneh Esrei, there are, in the first 3 blessings, again, provided by the Ari, how we can reduce or create layers that this high intensity of energy, not being sure whether I can handle it or I can't handle it, in the Amidah, we transform the channels. We can do with the cosmos. We transform the channels by which we reduce the intensity of the energy. It's in our hands. There are the first 3 blessings of all of the Amidah. How do you transfer it? To give you an example. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, the highest form of energy, the highest form of channeling that we can use in this universe to bring down the energy. The full impact of the energy, without any reduction in the energy, without any diminution of that energy, is the Yud Kei Vav Kei. So, in the first blessing, which is Magen Avraham, Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, we convert the letters in our minds to Tad Had, Tet Daled Hey Daled. Tet Daled Hey Daled. How did we arrive at the Tet? Because one letter down of the Yud is Tet. Down. The Hey of the Yud, of the Tetragrammaton, one step down, is Daled. The Vav, one step down, is Hey. And the final Hey, one step down, is Hey. The Ari gives us this. Unfortunately, he's telling me there's only 1 minute left. But the point I'm trying to make is, of course, it would require effort on your part. I mean, I'd love to give you all of this information, and hopefully I'm trying to get as much information out as possible to understand that we are in control. We are in control. And we are given certain methods. And even for a moment that we believe that we have lost control, and there comes always in a man or a woman's life where suddenly we feel it's out of control. things are just happening. They are illusions. Or we have not been furnished the information by which we can retain control. We will always be placed in positions whereby we will assume that we are no longer in control. Some people contract cancer, others don't. The idea of lucky and unlucky. It means you're not in control. How many people feel they're in control to prevent sickness? You ask 99 and 9/10% of the people all over the world, they have one answer for you: lucky or unlucky. Control. The Ari and Rabbi Shimon, including Avraham Avinu, when he says Sartan, he says remove it. Remove it? What are you talking about? Doctors can't remove it. He says Sartan, meaning there is that control. There is that control. And B'ezrat Hashem, we shall be zoche to remove, and as we know, cancer could start 20 years before it's detected. 20 years. That B'ezrat Hashem, with our study tonight, that we shall have removed if within us, and nobody knows, chas v'shalom, who does or who doesn't, that we shall have removed it. Amen. Amen.